Hi, folks. Supervisor George Hoehm. Welcome to the Hometown Podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing community preservation with our Director of Finance, former Assemblyman Colin Schmidt. We're going to be talking about the recent Clarkstown Community Preservation Act that's pending in the state legislature. So, what is the Clarkstown Community Preservation Act?
The Clarkstown Community Preservation Act is a policy that the town board has recommended be instituted here in Clarkstown. In the state of New York, we have PDR, community preservation legislation, that local communities can request and that citizens can enact in a referendum election. And the tool of this policy is to ensure we have conserved land, preserved natural resources. It really is the strongest policy tool available currently in the state of New York to local governments to protect the natural world within your jurisdiction. And so it's been used very successfully on Long Island, across the Hudson Valley, and other places in New York. Clarkstown would benefit immensely from having a fully enacted Clarkstown Community Preservation Act. And really, it's something that anyone who cares about open space, clean water, air, parkland, natural resources of any kind should truly be behind.
So the Preservation Act actually essentially requires what, an act of the state legislature?
It's a multi-step process, and I think this is something that's very important to explain for constituents to understand. So the Clarkstown Community Preservation Act follows the model of many other communities. Probably the closest community that's started to go through this process is Orangetown, our neighbor next door, but they haven't fully enacted it yet. The closest working community preservation program is the town of Warwick. So just a quick plug for anybody who wants to do a little extra homework, look at Warwick's community preservation program. It's been a fantastic success, and I think we're going to talk about that more. Mm-hmm. But it's a multi-step process. It started with the town of Clarkstown, town board, yourself and the board members started a Greenway Commission. I'm proud to be serving on that commission along with other staff and members of the community. The commission, working with the town board, recommended Community Preservation Act. So the first step was the recommendation, and then the town board passed a resolution requesting our assembly member and our senator introduce legislation in Albany. So a Community Preservation Act needs to be authorized by state legislation. The state assembly needs to pass it, the state senate needs to pass it, then the governor needs to sign it. That then gets sent back down to the town, and the town is mandated to put out a vote to the public, the general public, in a general election to vote up or down. Do they want to create a Community Preservation Act, which is a community preservation fund mechanism? And after all of these steps, the local government, the state government, all the way to the governor's office, it goes back to the people who have the final say if they want to use this great tool to preserve and conserve our community.
What type of conservation can we achieve with this act?
There are many options for conservation and preservation if this policy is fully implemented. The most obvious is the direct purchase of open space, which is a critical priority for Clarkstown residents and residents across the Hudson Valley. Then there is a concept called PDR, Purchase of Developmental Rights. So that impacts mainly agricultural lands, but potentially other lands, but mainly agricultural lands where a farmer, an agricultural user can continue using the property for what they've been doing. They could do that for generations to come, but they sell the current developmental rights at the current developmental value to the town to be put in a permanent conservation easement. And there's different legal mechanisms for how that's achieved, but it allows the use of the land to continue, but exhaust the future development opportunity, effectively preserving it in perpetuity in its current use. You could also use the funding to preserve historic properties, historic landmarks. You could also look at water quality issues, flood mitigation and control issues, purchasing lands, parcels that impact water quality. That's something that's critically important. Aquifer recharge areas. The list really goes on and on. There's a lengthy section of state law and of the proposed bill here. It's several pages long of the potential uses that are very far and wide encompassing.
So I know I'm very proud of what we've done in this administration with preservation of property and also historic buildings. The Traphagen property over at Jermon's and the full restoration that we were able to do, but that wasn't inexpensive. The town had to buy that property. There was no fund for it. The preservation of the Budgie House, the renovation of it, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it was covered through a state grant. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you get grants, sometimes you don't. But this can be really quite expensive as you try and do this. Like, for example, we were fortunate with the Storms Tavern, that we were able to get donated. But the work on it, the town's going to have to pay for. Now, fortunately, we have a grant, grants that we're looking for. But this Preservation Act would allow for properties like that, if they become available, for the town to target them, buy them, and there would be a fund that would be, money would be in. How does money get into this fund?
Sure. So you hit a lot of critical points there. The first goes into the Greenway Commission, which you started, which is required through this legislation to provide guidance to the town board to identify properties, historic properties, open space properties, anything else that might qualify. And then the town board and the town government is the administrator of a fund. And this fund is what the public has to authorize. And this is what the state legislation authorizes, which then allows the public to authorize in an up or down vote. And this is really the best way to fund these purchases, because all of the conservation and preservation that would occur through the Community Preservation Fund comes from a less than 1%, 0.75% assessment on real estate transactions that the buyer would contribute to this fund. And there's some great exemptions. The first 100,000 of improved real property is exempt. The first 50,000 of vacant land is exempt. And what this does is it ensures there's no permanent tax on residents to fund what can be a very expensive preservation program. It also ensures, unlike some other proposals where some other places would do, say, a bonding effort, tens of millions of dollars in bond, which would be almost the tax for decades on every taxpayer. This would help fund through those real estate transactions. Our estimates indicate about $5 million a year would be generated at no cost to taxpayers, and we would be able to leverage that solely in its lockbox. That $5 million is lockbox and can only be used for these approved uses and for properties that go through the review process and meet the criteria that the town and the legislation sets.
So, which is neat when you really think about it. So it will become a dedicated fund so that if it's $5 million a year, it can build up over time. So there are some significant properties that could be acquired with this that would forever protect them. I know that many years ago, 25 or 30 years ago at least, there was a movement in the 1990s for open space. The town created an open space committee. So this would be akin to what the town had done previously. However, the town paid for that.
Right.
The residents voted on a referendum. They approved a bonding limit. And ironically, the town didn't acquire, they didn't spend the full amount of money that was authorized. They spent, a good amount of it, but there was money that was still left. It expired before I became supervisor, but we've acquired some properties that are now forever protected, ridge lines and things of that sort. So how would these properties be identified? You talked a little bit about in general, but the Greenway Commission would basically work with, I guess, town staff, the public, and they would make recommendations?
Yes, the Greenway Commission would be the volunteer commission. There's the current composition, and once the legislation's enacted, the Greenway Commission would roll into the formal body required by the legislation, who would work with our experts in town government, but also seek public input and develop out a preservation plan and put milestones on, okay, once the fund is up to X amount of dollars, these are priority 1, 2, and 3. And then when we hit the next milestone of funding, these are the next priorities. And just to reiterate, what's so important about this legislation is there's no permanent impact on the taxpayer. We continue to see year after year compounding value and growth in our ability to preserve without a lasting impact on taxpayer. It's solely that fee and assessment one time at a real estate transaction.
So, so a property sells, and then there's a fee that's assessed as a one-time fee during that transaction, which then goes into this fund, and this fund is protected.
Correct.
You know, the town can't go borrow against it or pull the money out for anything other than the stated purposes, which are land preservation, preservation of historic resources.
Correct. You're absolutely correct. It's lockboxed, it's protected, it can grow, and there's nothing more purely American than this opportunity for a public who is inquiring often about, oh, we see this property, we're wondering what we can do here, we want clean air, we want open space, we all want that. How can we do this? The public's going to be given a choice if our state legislators and the governor approve, which certainly encourage everyone. A side note, we have an ongoing petition on town communications. Check out our social media, check out our website, sign the petition. We have hundreds and hundreds of people who have signed the petition. Let the legislators and the governor know the public wants the right to choose. And that's what I applaud the town board for doing. This policy tool gives every member of our community the right to say, I want to preserve and conserve more open space and natural resources, or not. And living in this community, we all live in this community, I think everyone's going to rally and say, you know what? We do want more open space. We do want to preserve what makes us historically a charming community. And we want those natural resources to have just a little extra help from town government, and we want to fund it at no impact to taxpayers.
And when you think about it, not just years ago in the 90s, but in more recent times, the Nanuet School Board and the Nanuet School District, under then Superintendent Mark McNeil, in consultation with the town, actually went out for their own bond issue, and they actually acquired what's now the Nanuet Outdoor Education Center, and preserved a whole chunk of the former St. Dominic's Homes property. And the people voted for that overwhelmingly. That passed like 80%, their referendum back then, about 15 or 18 years ago. And 15 years prior to that, the open space referendum passed, I think, at about 70%, across the town. So when the voters have had the opportunity to weigh in on preservation, they've overwhelmingly supported it. And again, the construct is that these are restricted, protected funds. The town we can't go buy police vehicles. We can't go buy, copper pipe or whatever we need for, within town government. It's restricted completely for the preservation of open space, sensitive properties, and these will be properties that will be evaluated by the Greenway Commission and will make recommendations for the town board to act.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at Warwick as a perfect example, it's the closest community to us in terms of travel distance. They've had it for over 20 years now. Their home values have increased, not just because of the 20-year average increase in home values, but locals, local government leaders, local business leaders, and local real estate leaders all tie it directly back to their Community Preservation Act having a significant increase to their home values. So this isn't just an investment in preserving our community. When enacted, voters are investing back in creating additional value for themselves and their neighbors in their own asset, in their own most valuable economic holding, their home.
So, and again, as a young father, you know, and I'll throw that in. I mean, you chose to move into this community. You and your wife Nikki have two young children. You're raising here. What is this going to mean for families like yours?
I mean, this is why this is such a great multifaceted tool, because it is a tool that will last for generations. The legislation lasts for 20 years. Warwick is already, again, the closest example, has already seen and earned an extension of that program. But once one piece of property is put into this conservation protection, it's in perpetuity, and it ensures that my two beautiful daughters under 2 will never see that property, change from the conservation value that we'll add on it today. Mm-hmm. And God willing, their children and people's children's children, that will be preserved so that the Clarkstown you see today, and that's something what attracted, obviously, somebody like myself who's moved into the Clarkstown community several years ago, the pride that people have in the town. The love of you have so much different that's great about a community. You have more rural parts, you have more developed parts, but keeping that balance, it's difficult, mm-hmm. as you know, and as the members of the public know, it's difficult. But if you have a tool, a multi-million-dollar tool that can compound to be tens of millions plus, a tool that can help solve any scenario that comes up and preserve any scenario that comes up, that is a generational tool that's unmatched. So,
Colin, you're more than a director of finance. You bring a wealth of experience in this realm. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
I've been involved in efforts to enact community preservation acts for over 20 years. I actually started as an intern in the state assembly for former Assemblywoman Annie Rabbitt, and at the time was the youngest aide ever hired in New York State Assembly history. And she was the main sponsor who passed the Warwick Community Preservation Act. And my first experience in this policy area was way back then, working with groups to bring them on to support this important policy framework. And over the years, I've been involved with this policy area. I've served in the New York State Assembly as an elected member of the Assembly, helped advance this policy at local and countywide levels. We've tried for years, both as an elected official and as just a private citizen advocate, to get more statewide tools so we don't have to do this individual legislation. I've served as co-chair of the Legislative Sportsman Caucus, which is the largest bipartisan, bicameral group of conservation legislators in the entire country. And I've been co-chair of the Assembly Minority Water Quality Task Force and numerous other positions that I've held in my elected roles to protect our open space and conserve our natural resources.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I mean, you're also somebody that you're pursuing a degree, a legal degree, or finishing up at law school, which is, commendable, but it's also brought an added benefit of you bringing an additional perspective and knowledge and information from your studies, which we've really been able to help to apply here in Clarkstown.
Definitely, and I think part of what I've learned from being an elected official and in appointed roles and in my service in the military is always be learning, and that's something that you advocate for all your staff and all your appointed positions, even if it's partially paid or part-time volunteers on our boards, is we always need to be advancing our academic knowledge, whether that's formally in a classroom, like I'm able to do, or if it's just really extra training that our boards get, because there's always a little bit of a new approach, a new perspective, and ensuring we're continually re-educating ourselves, advancing ourselves so we can better serve the community. You foster that, the town board fosters that, and really anyone who gets pulled into have an opportunity to help in Clarkstown is always encouraged to do that. And that continuing ed, whatever form it takes, really helps the taxpayer at the end of the day.
I thank you for that, and you've been a great addition here. So with everything you've done in the past in the legislature, this Community Preservation Act now as a new resident, something that's very important to you.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm grateful you have allowed me on the staff side to help spearhead this effort along with our entire team of vastly talented individuals. I'm grateful to bring those really decades of experience in this specific policy area and impart my knowledge, but meld it with our great planning department, our great legal team, and our other administrative and support staff to say this is what's going to work for Clarkstown, and allow the public at the end of the day to say we want it or not. I think they should say yes, and ensure this tool is here for generations to come, long after I've left, and 30 finance directors from now, they'll still have this program. They may forget who the many people who helped make it happen, but it will still be there.
Yeah, and listen, I think that is evident, and it shows in your commitment to this. And literally, this is when you brought it to me and the town board, we thought it was a natural, because it really is democracy in action. It's the people themselves deciding how we're going to preserve and protect, not just the town board. We've been very committed to this. I mean, very proud of my record here. We've preserved and conserved hundreds of acres. We've created the first new parks in decades, multiple parks and expanded parks. We've done a lot in terms of preservation, where have been a leader in the environmental movement as municipalities go. Everything from our solar field to solar in our buildings. And so this is really something that is going to be an enormous tool for us going forward.
Absolutely. And this could be our little plug also for a future episode of your podcast, where we're going to bring in some more folks to discuss the natural capital accounting resolution that has been recently adopted by the town board, and how we're not only looking to do conservation and preservation of open space, but we're also looking to be leaders in the finance and comptroller's office and in your budgeting process of creating additional value for our natural resources. So people should subscribe to this fantastic podcast, because what's going to come next, building off of this, is even better.
Well, and I'll tell you that it's interesting, because, that's also that's a program with the natural resource accounting that actually was an initiative in the Biden administration, correct?
Absolutely. It was enacted in some aspects during President Biden's administration, and we're working with some of the leaders who help put it together at the federal level. And it's great, as these are academics and nonprofit leaders who are working with us, no cost to us, to implement some of these principles at the local level. Most places aren't doing it yet, but they're trying. And there's a value to our open space and recreation spaces. It's more than just the smile you get when I get when I go with my daughters or kids and grandkids that people go out with. There's actually a numeric value that benefits taxpayers, and that's something also exciting that we're working on that people are going to want to hear more about in the future.
Before we wrap up, how can people help us get this approved?
We urge everyone, if the least thing that you want to do, log on to social media or our website and sign the petition. Just sign, and we're forwarding that to our legislators and the governor during this process to say, please, you need to pass this. That's the first thing. Second thing, go on social media and share the petition. Share the word that this is a great conservation tool that you're standing in support. And then, God willing, the legislature does the right thing and the governor does the right thing and sends this back to the voters. Put a yes vote when it comes time for that referendum. It won't be this year, The timing, the vote won't be this year. It really depends on what the state legislature does. We're going to keep people informed. So sign the petition, let your social media followers know how great this is, and when the vote comes, vote to conserve open space, vote to conserve and preserve our community, and vote to increase the value of your own home, all at no cost to taxpayers.
It's a great program. I want to thank you for your work on it. I want to thank you for your work on the Greenway Commission. These are things that can really change the future face of Rockland County and the town of Clarkstown. So thank you for your efforts.
Happy to be part of it.